Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we have another amazing guest. Today's guest is R.L. Poole. R.L. Poole is a contemporary American researcher, lecturer, and best-selling author known for his specialized work in megalithic mysteries. He is a high-functioning autistic researcher and life member of American Mensa. He is widely regarded as the world's foremost expert on Coral Castle, a famous stone structure in Florida built single-handedly by Edward Leedskalnin. His book, the Leedskalnin Codex, explores the engineering secrets behind it. R.L. Poole's alien abduction research bridges his analytical pattern-focused background with deeply personal accounts culminating in his book Beneath the Haunted Sky, The Evidence for Alien Abduction, a book which landed him as Graham Hancock's Author of the Month for the second time. Unlike researchers who look at the phenomenon purely from an outside perspective, Poole approaches the subject as both an investigator and a lifelong experiencer. He blends the matter-of-fact data with personal evidence to push back against mainstream scientific skepticism and UFO denial. His criticism of mainstream UFO skepticism have remained unchallenged. His fringe science and historical research have led to multiple appearances on the radio show Coast to Coast AM. He has also been twice featured as an expert commentator on the History Channel series The Unexplained with William Shatner. So, Mr. Poole, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me here and for that very generous introduction. It's really an honor to be invited onto the program, and I'm really excited about the information that I get the opportunity to share with your viewers.
Awesome. Just to start off the interview, I know your contact, your main one, a big one, happened to you in 1978 at the age of 6. But in between those years, like from 2.5 to 6, did anything otherworldly happen to you or out like really strange?
I suppose so. I mean, this is kind of a silly story about pre before that experience in 1978, but um, I had displayed anomalous traits at times. Like, for instance, when I was about 3, I would go out and sit on the stairs of my house, and it was an upstairs apartment, and I would sit at the top of the landing. And out of nowhere, a squirrel just came down and just sat beside me, and it didn't happen once. It happened over and over and over again. And this squirrel would come over and he would sit on my knee, or he would climb on my shoulder, or we were never like touched, like I couldn't pet him or anything. And I didn't try. But uh people were like, how are animals like just coming to you? Why aren't they just attracted to me? And I didn't have any idea. But now that I look back, I'm like, that is a very strange thing to have happened to you, that an animal that ordinarily avoids humans sees one and says, I want to sit next to that one. He would do it. We did it for months. I would come out every day and here he would come. I even named him Oscar. That was his name. And Oscar would see me and then come running out. I never offered him any food. I never tried to pet him. There was just something about energy that just drew him in. And I don't know that that's necessarily related to my experiences or anything, but there were like little odd things like that that would happen in my life at a very young age. Sure. Yeah.
So let's get into your 1978 contact. So this thing happened to you at the age of 6. So what exactly happened?
Everything I remember is I remember going to bed the night before as a young man, and I was wearing my Spider-Man pajamas. And uh, I remember this because I very much like Spider-Man, and I liked it so much that I was wearing pajamas that were a bit too tight for me. And I remember my mother telling me, we're going to have to get you some new pajamas. Those are too tight for you to keep wearing. And I'm like, no. And I wanted to keep them, right? And so those were the pajamas I was wearing to bed. And when I wake up, and I went to sleep normally, and I don't remember anything about after I fell asleep. until I wake up. But when I wake up, I'm not in my room. I'm not in my house. I'm outside in the backyard. And when I come to myself, I'm just standing there looking up at the sky, and I don't know exactly what I'm looking at. And I can see dawn is breaking over the horizon. And it's wintertime. It's very cold, and there's snow on the ground, about 6 inches of snow. And that's where I'm standing in the backyard, barefoot in the snow, and my pajamas are missing. I just have on my underwear, and my pajamas are missing. I'm barefoot. I'm in the backyard, and I'm staring up at the sky, and I don't understand where I am or why I'm there right away. And I don't feel cold at all. That was the strange thing. I felt oddly warm. Um, and I look down at my feet because I'm thinking to myself, my feet aren't cold either. And I look down and I can see my feet have actually melted the snow, and I can see the grass underneath my feet from where I've given off so much heat that I've melted the snow. And right beside my left foot is a little toy. It was my favorite toy, and it was a little flying saucer toy with a clear little bubble that you could open up, and you could put a little guy in there, and you could play around with it like a UFO. And it was setting by my foot in the snow while I'm back there staring at the sky in just my underwear as a little kid. I'm standing there and I don't move from the spot. I'm unsure of what to do or what has happened, when suddenly the back door opens, and I turn around as I hear my mother, and she screams like, "Oh my God, there he is." And they come out, and as they come out, what I notice is that she's breaking through the new snow. There are no footprints around me. And so she comes through the snow and she grabs me, and they pull me inside, and they have me sitting at the kitchen table right by the back door. And my mother gives me a blanket and puts it over me, and I'm taking the blanket, but I'm sweating under it. I'm hot. I'm not cold at all. And I don't know how long I've been out there. And she fixes me a cup of cocoa, and I'm sitting there sweating under this blanket and drinking the cocoa. And this was back in the 70s. Parents would just talk right in front of children. They acted like you weren't there half the time. And so they start having this conversation about me as though I'm not there. And they're trying to figure out what happened. And my mother says, "Oh, he's a sleepwalker." And my dad said, I don't think that's it." And she said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, the store has two locks, and we had to unlock both of them to get out there. So how did he sleepwalk, leave the house, lock the door behind him, and then end up out in the backyard?" And he said, "I don't know if you've noticed this, but there were no footprints in the snow leading up to him. It was as if I had been placed there, like a little toy soldier or something, that I had been just placed in the middle of the snow-covered yard, which was completely unbroken at the time." And so when he said that to her, they both stopped talking, and they looked over at me, and then they looked up, and then they looked at each other, and then they didn't say another word, and they never brought it up again. And that was my first experience. And I don't remember any entities. I don't remember what happened. I would love to know what happened. But from what I have understood through my communications with them, is that they kind of try people out as children for a longer kind of generational program. Um, and they are looking for certain markers in people. And when they encounter them, they are put into one of several programs. But it wasn't until many, many years later that I found out why they're abducting us and how they use what they collect. Yeah.
Did you ever find out if your parents or other family members might have had contact?
I have never heard of my parents, my siblings, anyone else experiencing contact, but something happened that I felt was interesting, and it was out of character for my dad at the time. It wasn't long after I had this experience that my father took me to go see the movie Chariots of the Gods, um, based on the very famous book by Eric von Daniken, who I had the honor and privilege of getting to meet before he passed away in 2018. And uh, it was very out of character for my dad to just take just me to the movies to see this movie in particular. And the whole time that the movie's playing, he's not watching the movie, he's watching me. And I don't know if he was trying to trigger a memory or see what my reaction would be to some of these things. But I remember him asking me what I thought. And I was like, I'm awfully young to be asking me what I think about this. And so now, later in retrospect, I can look back and say, oh, I think he was trying to feel me out of, is that what happened to me? I think they never really understood what had happened. And I think that that was his way of trying to search for answers through trying to maybe trigger something in me or jog my memory through exposure to the UFO subject in general.
Now, you said, I think that the ETs were looking for certain genetic markers. In a past interview, you did talk about the humans that had blue and green eyes.
Yes.
Can you get into
Yes.
that?
Well, one of the things I can tell you is because I've seen uh, Grays in person more than once, and they wear black sclera covering lenses over their eyes. Their eyes are large, and so are their pupils. And it seems apparently they come from a place that doesn't have much light, and it's a different wavelength of light. And so they wear these lenses that regulate light. No matter how bright or how dim, they see the same all the time, which is a very clever invention. But more than that, without those sclera lenses, these beings only have blue or green eyes. And um, they are, so I have to give you a little bit of backstory, a little bit of history, that we have to go back to the Book of Enoch. And I am not an especially religious person, but I love history. And I've read many of the religious texts of the world strictly for their historical content and value. And one of the things that you read in the book of Enoch is about the birth of Noah, because Noah is the great great grandson of Enoch. And it talks about his origins. And when we look at the scientific record, the appearance of blue eyes is a mutation, which they say occurred between 10 and 15,000 years ago. This is around the same time that the story of Noah seemed to take place. The flood coincided with what we know as the Great Melt, the end of the Ice Age, right? And so we have history, religious history, and genetic science both arriving at about the same time point. And uh, Noah was, uh, according to the book of Enoch, the product of the line of Enoch and the wife of Lamech, his grandson. His wife Patanash was inseminated artificially, and because Lamech comes home to find Patanash pregnant. He's a shepherd out in his fields for months. He comes home and his wife is pregnant. Now, Patanash was known as the most beautiful woman of her village, but Lamech was the most respected man in the village. And he comes home to find her pregnant, and he says, who touched you? And she said, no man has touched me. And she was known as beautiful, but she was a very, very good woman. She would never do such a thing. So they go to Methuselah, Lamech's father, and they say, who do you believe? And he said, I, I believe both of you. I believe you weren't here, and I believe that no man has touched her. So they said, okay, so we will take it further. And so Methuselah went to his father Enoch, and they asked Enoch the prophet, what shall we think about this? And so he takes this to the angels, and they said, tell Lamech that the Ancient of Days, they didn't even have a word for God. They called him the Ancient of Days, has made an insemination of his flesh in the flesh of Patnosh. And they are to have this child and raise this child and to call him Noah. Now, when Noah was born, it caused quite a stir because he did not look like all of the other kids. He was born with extremely pale skin, that he was born with white hair and with bright blue eyes. Hmm. Now, there was something else that I noticed that gave me a hint that this is extraterrestrial related because it said, upon Noah's birth, he opened his mouth and praised the Lord. And right there, I said, aha, this is what I think it is, because these beings have the ability to establish a telepathic connection with you, and they can even try to override your motor cortex and make you move, say, uh, things that you did not originally intend or think to do. And so, what they were doing was they were crossing their genetics with our genetics. And what they were doing was testing the telepathic connection to see, did it work? Did it work? And it did. And Noah is the first person in recorded history to be born with blue eyes. Written in the first book, written in first person. I was there. I saw, I heard, I said, Enoch. And he's telling the story of his own great grandson's origins. And it sure sounds a lot to me like alien intervention, right? And so, what they called the Immaculate Conception, we would call artificial insemination today, right? And so, um, he's the first person born with blue eyes. And so, ever since then, I've always felt like whenever you see a person who has blue or green eyes, you are looking at a son or daughter of Noah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, my entire family has blue eyes, so that's
Yeah,
pretty awesome.
mine too. And I don't want to sound um eugenic-y. This is not my choice. This is not my made up legend or myth. This is written. This still exists. Look at us. It still exists. 15,000 years ago, they made a genetic change to us. And this is what I found out later was I actually was met officially by a gray male during an experience, and they communicated with me. They gave me a tour of but not a tour, but kind of walked me around the craft as this male gray spoke to me, and he leveled some very big bombs that people, when I say them, people freak out, but they tend to match up with what we should be thinking, I believe. And one of those things, which ties directly to this, is during the experience, I'm standing there fully awake, and the being who has taken me off of the bed or the table, and he's motion, come on. And so we're walking around, and suddenly he just stops and he turns around and he says, telepathically, by the way, they do not speak. But inside my head, he said, you know, humans will never come to an agreement or a resolution on the debate between creationism versus evolution because they're both right. And I was like, they're both right. He said, yeah, basically, Man evolved to a certain point. They saw us, decided to exploit us for what they could have. And when I tell you why they're doing all this, it makes perfect sense. But they took us, it says, from the dust of the ground. They basically dug up the DNA of pre-modern humans and they tweaked us genetically. They started the streamlining process. But then, even after that, we were quite the disappointment, a failed experiment. So they tweaked us again. Again, not exactly what they're looking for. So, what they decided to do was to combine a little bit of their DNA with our DNA. And now we're related now. And that came with some door prizes like extremely pale skin, bright blue eyes, certain things like that that carry and still carry over to this day because of their genetic interference in our natural progression.
Well, so basically we're all family in a sense.
We are. I consider them more like in-laws than blood relatives, but sure, you know, because of their intrusive manner of behavior. And I do not. People say, "Oh, I'd love to be abducted." You have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, I get the curiosity, and I could even understand someone saying, "I'd love to meet an alien." Fair enough. But to want to be abducted, that is an entirely different experience. And the ontological shock, the trauma, the feelings of helplessness, no matter how gently they may treat you, is still something that is fundamentally difficult to reckon with, I would say. At least that's been my experience.
I Skyped with British man-head contactee Simon Parks from the UK a few years ago, and during that Skype call, he said that the ETs would use the color blue, especially within their eyes, to use that as a sort of sedative effect on humans,
Hmm.
because of the like the blue frequency type of thing.
Hmm.
So I thought
Well,
I
like,
found that pretty interesting.
yeah, since I'm wearing blue, my eyes are blue, the background's blue. Blue seems to be a popular color for calming. And we know this, that pink and blue are very calming colors. Like when we paint our child's room, either a light pink or a light blue, it is meant to be calming and have that kind of effect. But I have to say, I don't have any experience with any other species other than the small grays has been my only real experience. But I've heard people say that the small grays work for another species and all of that. But I have to say, in my experience, the grays that I've dealt with, they seem to be in charge of what they're doing. In fact, the being that walked me around, he was wearing like a black, like turtleneck, long sleeve, kind of one piece uniform, and it had two gold dots appear on the collar, which I took to be some kind of rank insignia that he seemed to be in charge. And one of the things I noticed when I was being walked around on the ship was no one paid a bit of attention. No one even looked at us. So I thought, this guy's in charge. He's in charge. No one is monitoring or seeing if they're no, he's in charge. I'm being talked to by the boss on the ship. Yeah.
Did you ever find out why they were taking you?
Yes. I'm sorry. I have to cough. Bear with me one moment. So you understand, I teach language all day. And so I'm often speaking for long periods of time. And by the time I get to this time of day, uh, my throat's worn out. But yes, I did ask him. And these are the first words that I ever heard telepathically from a small gray. He gets me up out of the bed after I just had an explicit encounter with a female gray. Okay. Ordinarily, they're human females. And this one particular time, it was a female gray. After the female gray leaves, not 60 seconds later, the door opens again and a male gray walks in wearing the uniform that I described with the what looked like rank insignia. And all of a sudden, and if you've been abducted, you know, they lay you on a table and you can move, but it's like, oh, you feel like you weigh 1,000 pounds. Like it's not, you're not strapped down, it's like pulled down to it. And all of a sudden, I felt this table like release me. And he literally motioned like this in a human gesture, like, come with me without saying a word. And so I got up and I followed him and we walked out of the door and we stood kind of in this little three hallway, little triangulation right in the middle. And as he stood there, on one side is this what looks like a giant bay. Uh, and there are other humans. I can see like three other humans over there in their pajamas. One girl, it was like a young woman, dark hair, longer dark hair, and she was walking around barefoot in her nightgown and just kind of looking around like amazed at everything. And then over there, there was a guy, and he was standing right up next to the wall, and he was talking like he was talking to the wall. They seemed to be very disoriented. And they weren't even like in you know like in caged or anything. They just there was like a little bar maybe 2.5 feet tall, like a bar that went across to separate the areas. And then on the other side I could see where the crew was. I could see other grays and they all seemed to be standing at terminals looking at screens, and occasionally they would look at each other and then back at the screen. I think they were maybe speaking to each other. And at the end of that particular part of the ship, I could see these four very large oval windows. And the reason I remember those windows so vividly is because when I looked out of them, I saw stars. I did not see Earth. I did not see Moon. I saw stars, which means we're in space right now, just like this, right? And between those two rooms, there's a wall. And against that wall is a metallic bench that has a back to it. And sitting on this metallic bench is a canister, a fairly good size canister. And inside this canister, there's a little fetus, a little gray fetus floating in this yellowish greenish fluid that appears to be backlit from the bench that it rests on. And its umbilical cord goes up to the lid of this canister. And then out of the lid of the canister comes two small metallic looking pipes that plug into the bench, the back of the bench. And beside where these plug in, there are little like symbols that I believe are like some kind of monitoring system for the fetus that is being artificially gestated. And he turns around and he locks eyes with me, and he sees me notice the bench and the little gray fetus, and he says, "What do you do when evolution stops being your friend?" Those are the first words I ever heard from a gray. And it was, by the way, I want to mention it was the strangest feeling in the world to be communicated with telepathically for the first time, because the way I experienced it, and I think this is maybe common, is they talk to you in your own voice. I heard my own voice when it said, and I could for a second I was like, am I going crazy right now? Because I just heard a thought in my voice that I didn't think like, and it took me a minute to realize, oh, this is how you talk. And so without speaking, because everything was dead quiet in the craft, and I did not want to break that silence with my voice. And so I just communicated back mentally and I said, but evolution is our friend. That was my response. And his response was, not always. And what he explained to me, and the reason that they take us, is that their species has evolved to the point of extinction. And it is because their brains are on a runaway track of evolution that keeps getting more and more powerful. And as the brain keeps getting more and more powerful, the body keeps getting weaker and smaller by comparison. And they are at I guess, an event horizon, genetically speaking, where they are past the point of no return. That he said that the females are often born or often grow up to be too small to carry their young to term or to survive giving live birth to them. They're shockingly similar to us in some ways, as far as like their body, their reproductive organs, things like that, very similar. Um, and but they're so small. And he said the males were being born sterile or without genitalia whatsoever. And so their race is dying out. And what they decided to do was to take another compatible species that we have strong hearts, strong muscles, strong immune systems. We're like a Jeep, we're tough compared to them. And what they wanted to do is merge our genetics together to create a new species that kind of sets the evolutionary clock back maybe hundreds of thousands of years, but without losing any of the things that they wish to keep, their high intelligence, their telepathic ability. But then they want to have that in our big, strong human bodies with good immune systems. And so this has been an ongoing project for more than a millennia. And he said that is what they are doing with it. And in particular, some of us are having our genetics taken from us and used to create hybrids. They're hybridizing their species. And then some of us, they also take and clone to create like clones of that DNA. And then from my experience, they would have human females come in and then they would create other humans through that. So they had three different ways of using these genetics in order to facilitate whatever functions they have or are in need of humans to perform for them. That's my information, and I got it directly from a Gray himself. So I would say that it's pretty reliable. But I also don't believe that we should take everything they say as gospel truth. These beings are much smarter than us, and I don't trust them for because of their intelligence. He, what I've found is what they say is true, but it's not always the whole truth. And a lie of omission is still a lie, right? Now, sometimes, like how governments will say, well, you can't know for national security, I think that they have sometimes the same protocols of, I can't tell you too much lest you affect the outcome, right? So I think sometimes it is done out of prudence, not out of cruelty or a nefarious kind of purpose, but perhaps out of necessity to ensure the integrity of the program itself. Yeah.
Coming back to that baby Dre fetus, were you aware if that fetus had an umbilical cord or was it being fed through the skin?
It had an umbilical cord that went up through, I could see it like that's kind of like it was like floating with the umbilical cord coming from its abdomen, just like us. And then it went up to the lid of the canister. And then I couldn't see it like underneath there, but I could see where it went. Two small little metal pipes came out and went right into the bench. So I feel like it was being artificially fed oxygen and nutrition through these two little separate pipes through into the umbilical cord to simulate the gestation of a mother being.
So that directly points to being hybridized or hybridized gray.
Well, I don't even know if it's hybridized. I think that he said this is how we have to gestate our young now. This is what he was showing me is they don't ever have like proper normal gestation of a fetus in a female. When it gets to be a certain size, they then transfer it to these gestation uh, chambers to finish development. And I thought, wow, this makes so much sense when you think about the fact that many women report have it like they're pregnant or feeling pregnant, and then a month or two later, now they're not pregnant anymore. There's been no miscarriage. They don't know why. They don't know where it went. I believe that one of the things that they do is they use human females as gestation hosts to a certain point, and then once it reaches that critical phase, they remove the fetus and put it into one of these containers to finish the gestation. That's my theory. I can't prove that, and I was not told that, but it certainly lines up, I think.
Yeah, I've had a few mothers that had phantom pregnancies on the show before, so it is a thing. But coming back to when you woke up on that table,
Mm.
moments prior to that, you had an intimate moment, I believe, with a female gray.
Yeah, and so this isn't easy to talk about, but you're so respectful as a host. And I think that this is something that your audience needs to hear. They need to know. Um, Many times when I have been abducted and I have been consciously aware of it during some part of the process, I'm laying on a table, a human female, unclothed, will walk into the room. And they're often wearing some kind of, it looks like a helmet or a mask or something, and I can't see their face. And it doesn't look like they should be able to see either, but they walk around like there's no problem. And then as I'm laying there, like on the table and I can't move, they will straddle me and, whatever. So I wake up, I'm lying on the table. I'm okay, this is familiar. I'm aware. I'm like, did it happen or is it about to happen? That was my thought. When the door opens and in walks a female gray, and she is wearing a black wig. I could tell it's a black wig, about shoulder length black hair. It has bangs. She has bangs, and she's wearing a very short white kimono. It looks like a white silk kimono. And she looks at me, and then she just right as soon as she enters the door and the door closes, she looks at me, and then she undoes the little belt of the kimono, and she just drops it on the floor and walks right over to me. And my first thought was, no, 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 because they're very small. And I thought there's a potential for injury here that I'm not comfortable with. And so, and even then, like, I'm like, you're still worried about someone else. In the middle of this happening to you, you're like, are they going to be okay? Like, you know, but it was a very different experience from what I was used to. She did the same thing. She straddled me, um, and physically compatible. One of the things I noticed was that she had six toes on each foot, and she had five little fingers on her hand, but she had six toes on each foot. And um, so as things started to happen, and she was initiating this interaction, there was this like I don't know quite how to explain it, but it was like a white mist that all of a sudden kind of appeared around us, almost like if you've ever been in a bar and seen like cigarette smoke haze, where it's like it has a level and then you can see under it that it's clear. It was very much like that, and she started suddenly inhaling very deeply, and then uh began to be more animated in her actions. And as it was happening, she made a strange, I don't know how to explain the sound, but it was sounds like a beehive. She opened her mouth and vocalized a sound, but it sounded like bees buzzing. I don't know how else to describe it. It's the closest thing I can think of. And then once it was over, she climbed down and she went to walk away, and then suddenly she just stopped, like she forgot something, and she turned around and she came and stood right next to me, and I was unable to move still, but she looked down at me, and she looked down at me like, I don't know how to read their expressions, but it struck me as very compassionate, very like tender, and she took her hand and she just stroked it down my arm as she looked at me. Like it was very like gentle and very sweet. And um and then she like looked like almost like a last look. And then she turned and walked out without without putting her kimono back on. And then about 60 seconds after that, this male gray came in and brought me around and showed me things. And so the way that I'm trying to make sense out of this is that he realized that this event is full of ontological shock and trauma, that it is not consensual. And I believe that this was his way of trying to explain the reasons behind it, and to try to also, and I do feel this, was he was trying to be a bit manipulative to kind of get me to be on their side and have some sympathy for why they are abducting, assaulting, and traumatizing the citizens of Earth.
It's understandable if we were in their position. I believe we would do anything that's possible to continue our species. But I think she was like giving you a thank you of sorts.
I think so. I think it was payment. I think it was trade. If you'll be cool about this, we'll share some cool things with you. Um, the problem with this is that we don't start something off that is not consensual and then try to make an arrangement. That is my issue. And then actually, I have to be honest with you, once I understood what their agenda was, I totally did not want to be a part of it. I became resistant to it because this might take a minute, but can I explain why? I think it matters. Is that, I've liked comic books. I mean, I'm sitting in a chair that says Marvel. I'm a big comic book fan. I always have been a fan of heroes. And I've made a study out of what defines a hero and what defines a villain. And for as long as I have studied and the many genres of heroes and villains that I've studied, I find one thing to be common. Villains always want to violate natural law, right? Why is why is murder bad when you're going to die anyway? Well, because you're interrupting the natural order of events. You are preempting nature by intervening, and therefore violating natural law makes you a villain, makes you a criminal. When we look at Thanos and the Avengers, he he said, "Well, I'm saving the universe." The universe did not ask you to save it. Let things play out naturally. And so, my opinion, whether it be the human race or it be the species of the Greys, if you are evolving to the point of extinction, you have been selected. Go gracefully. And when you start breaking one natural law, you will find that you have to break another law and another law and another law in order to keep the train moving. And so this is where I was able to make my determination that these are not heroes, these are villains. Even if they're gentle, even if they have some form of ethics that we can identify with, they are not here for our best interest, but their own. And they also violate natural law, and they violate the sanctity of self. Um, that autonomy It should be a universal concept. And I don't think that they would be so on board with the process if it were humans abducting grays and doing these things to them. I don't think that they would feel the same way and be as supportive the other way around. That's my feeling.
Well, in the end, things have to be consensual.
That's right.
Yeah.
And this has started off from a very early age as being not consensual. And I believe that part of this is security reasons that they have to, they can't control us. Like, I've had one of those grays stand in front of me on a pedestal, and he was still this tall, and he's a little tiny guy. And compared to them, I'm like when a human jumps into a silverback gorilla cage. That's them confronting me. Um, and no one, and I don't care how smart you are, you're not going to outfight a silverback gorilla, right? So we need to keep them quiet. We need to keep them asleep. We need to keep them unaware of what's happening, right? And so I believe this is mostly security protocols, but also stealth because they do employ deception in what they do to maintain their ability to break natural law.
Now, you talked about being on a pedestal. This happened in 2020?
The Guardian ceremony, as I like to call it. Yeah, that happened around 2020. As did the first experience that we were talking about, where I had the experience with the female gray. They both happened uh, close to each other. And I go to sleep as normal. And then when I wake up, and so here was the thing, a little pre-story about that is I've been given stones by them for some reason. Here, I'll show you. I think I have them right here. I keep them nearby. And I've been given these stones for years, and for the life of me, I still don't know why they're given to me. Um, but I will find them after an abduction experience, like sitting on the coffee table, or near the on the nightstand, or on the floor next to the bed, something like that. And um, I had recently moved from one place to another, and I foolishly asked myself the question of, I wonder if they know that I've moved, right? And that's when I found this stone lying when I came to my new house to move in. This stone was sitting on the welcome mat directly in the center. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I guess they know I'm here. But then I picked up the stone and I looked at it and I was like, that is a very straight. Where would that come from? It's like a black, sorry, I'll try to hold it in front of me. Black, glossy river stone. Very pretty, I think, and very distinctive. This isn't a rock you see every day. And so when I was holding the rock, I looked up at the sky and just kind of jokingly, not that I really believed that they were listening, but I was like, is this you guys? Are you the ones doing this? The very next night, I see them like the lights out in the distance, and I know they're there for me. And I end up falling asleep. And when I wake up, I'm standing, same clothes, uh, and I'm standing on some kind of pedestal. It's only about this high off the ground, but it's a little pedestal. And everything else is completely pitch black except for this little cone of light that's over me, just me. And the light is gold. And I don't mean like yellow, I mean the color of gold with little glitters floating around in it, like little pieces of gold or something. And I'm just standing there. And so I think to myself, okay, what's this all about? And so one of the things I've learned about this species is there's no sense in freaking out. There's no sense in panicking. When they want you to know something, they'll tell you. When it's time to do something, they'll do it. It's best to just remain still, remain calm, and remain patient. And so I decided to display the utmost discipline and control and just simply stand very patiently. And as I look out, I cannot tell you the size or the shape of the room. I cannot tell you if anyone is in here, but here's what I can tell you. It feels like someone is in here. I feel like I'm being watched like from every angle, like I'm surrounded, but I can't see them, which is a very kind of panic inducing feeling, but I was able to uh, get a hold of that very quickly. As I'm standing there and I say, okay, what's this all about? A door opens a very far distance from where I'm standing on the right hand side, and in walks, and I can't see who or what, but I can see a very white figure, like glowing white against the black darkness. And the being turns and starts walking directly toward uh my position. And and I see, oh, it looks like a male gray. And yes, you can tell male and female by looking at them. And as he's walking toward me, he hits a certain part of the floor, and as he's walking, a pedestal rises up under him, and then he stops walking, and the pedestal just carries him with the same cone of light over him, following him. And now we're the only two lit objects in this room. And now, as I'm here, and here he comes closer and closer and closer and close. And I mean, I'm just standing there, and he's getting so close. It is uncomfortable. He's this far away from me. I mean, less than arm's length. I felt like this was purposeful as well in retrospect. And I'll tell you why at the end. But we're standing there, and I look at him, and he looks at me, says nothing. And again, in retrospect, I could tell he's looking at me, but I think he's talking to the observers. And I'm not included in this part of the conversation or the ceremony. And as we stand there, I'm looking at him and I'm really trying to take in the details of everything. And it occurs to me, and I think to myself, oh, they're kind of cute. When you really look at them, they're kind of cute. Like they blink slowly, like which is adorable. And the way that they move is so different than us. I find it quite charming, really. Um, and as I'm standing there and I'm just looking in his eyes, I'm completely unafraid. And suddenly, and it felt like forever, to be honest with you, Jan, but it was probably 2 minutes. But that feels like forever. Just imagine just sitting and staring at someone for 2 minutes and not saying anything. That's a long time, right? And suddenly he raises his arm, and I'll never forget the way that they blink. They blink like really slowly, like a cat ready to fall asleep, is how I liken it. And then he raised his arm, and when he did, when we point at something, humans, we raise our hand, right, and lead with our hand out. But that isn't what he did, and I found it very strange. He moved his shoulder and raised his arm and then extended his finger, his index finger, and he had 4 digits, like kind of like a thumb and 3 very long fingers. And he reached out and he touched me right there, right over my heart. And at the same time that his finger made contact with my person, inside my head, I heard this booming voice that said, Guardian. And it just like, like echoed inside my head. It reverberated in my skull. And when that happened, I got this huge download of information. I realized, oh, Guardian, bodyguards, they are classifying my genetics for future purposes, that they choose and classify the humans that they abduct for different purposes. They have breeding humans, they have worker humans, they have guardian humans, like very much like how we have dogs that are bred genetically for different tasks. They do the same thing with humans. And my DNA or my traits fit what they call the guardian class of human bodyguards, human pit bull, if you will, where the security guards were the ones who defend them or protect them or run security for them. And I saw in my head, I saw what looked like multiple versions of me, younger, more fit versions of me, all wearing like one piece blue uniforms, tight fitting blue uniforms, with like a black belt at the waistline. And I could see, and he showed me in my head, it was like a movie. Now you have to understand, this took place within seconds. Okay. This all took place in my head within seconds. It took me weeks to unpack all of this and really go through it. So, what I saw was it was a scenario like a movie. And I don't know if this was invented or if it was a memory of this being, but I saw what looked like me in one of those suits, and he had some kind of weapon. It was like spear like, but I don't think it was something as primitive as a spear. I think it might have been an energy weapon, maybe, or something, but I couldn't tell what it was. But these a female gray and a child, little gray, they ran into this oval dome shaped door, and a door slid down in front of them. And all of a sudden, my POV is the guardian at the door, and I see these creatures coming, and they're all black. I can't make out what they are, but I remember it was like I was sharing the consciousness of whoever this was, and myself and this other person both shared the sentiment of nothing gets through this door alive. And it was like that was the last, and then it went, then it ended. But what he was showing me is that they use my genetics, and I'm sure the genetics of others, to create what they call guardians, which are their personal bodyguards. These are humans which will fight to the death to protect them, uh, without hesitation. And one of the, I guess, prerequisites is you must be fearless as a human. And because of I think it's because of my particular kind of autism, I don't really feel fear the way most people do. It doesn't make me cool. It's actually a liability, which we'll have to talk about some other time. But it's like if you couldn't feel pain, you're going to hurt yourself if you can't feel pain, right? You may not physically feel it, but you're going to damage yourself and not realize it. People who are too brave, they get in trouble without realizing it, right? And so, but in this particular case, now that I look back, I'm amused because I know why they did everything the way they did. This was a graduation ceremony. Okay. Now think about it. Whenever they have like guard dogs, canine units, they always have a graduation ceremony for the canines. These German shepherds, all in their handsome little flak vests and stuff. And they're all sitting in a line. And it is tradition during the graduation is that they often will let a cat loose, and the cat will just walk right in front of all the dogs to try to pull a reaction. One last test to see, are they truly disciplined, right? And should they pass that final test, they all get their little certificate and a milk bone. You did it, buddy. You made it. They see us, and I think treat us a bit like that, like dogs. And we're about as smart to them as dogs are to us. I hate to say that, but it's true. And I know now that this was the ceremony. Put me someplace alone, disoriented. I bet he doesn't do anything. I bet he doesn't panic. I bet he doesn't step off the platform. Not because he's afraid, but because he's not afraid. Okay, next test. He's going to be in a completely blackened room with all of you watching him, and he's not going to react. Okay, the next test is I'm going to get extremely close to this human being. Watch how he is not aggressive, yet not afraid at the same time. Now I'm going to just stare at him and say nothing. Look at his control as he doesn't care the least bit to be calm when other people would be freaking out, yelling, screaming, running around. I did nothing. And then after the final, what I would call stress test, then this being said, yes, you passed the final test. You are classified as a guardian. That's my that's my story. Oh, but when I woke up, remember I said about the black stones? I said, "Is this you guys?" Well, when I woke up the next day from my experience, uh, I had this in my pocket, and this stone is shaped exactly like their heads. It's a teardrop shaped stone. It's very flat and it's perfect. It is perfectly shaped, and it is shaped just like their head. So this was their way of saying, "Yeah, it's us." Right. And that's the last stone I received. I have a small collection of five of them right now. But I used to have a cigar box full, which I gave to my son because he asked me for them. Um, and then I saw the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage. You ever see that? Right. And these black stones played a part in that movie. And when we watched the movie, I watched it with my son, he said, "You have a bunch of those, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Where do they come from?" And I said, "I don't know where they come from. I just find them sometimes." And he said, "Show me." And so I got the box out, I dumped them in the floor, and he was like, "Whoa." And he said, "How many are there?" I said, "I don't know. Well, count them up and see." There were 53 of them.
Regarding that contact event, in a past interview, you said you felt knighted. I found that really cute.
Yeah, it did. It felt very much like a knighting ceremony, um, passing a test and being given an honor. And when it happened, when he touched me like that and he said the word guardian, I bowed my head to him out of respect, that I felt as though I was being honored, that I was being given a designation that was rare and valuable, and also something that kind of told me who I was. Uh, Not to me, but to others, like how they see me. They see me as this is the person you want when everything goes wrong, right? When your life is on the line, when your family's life is on the line. We need one of these guys called the Guardians because, in fact, I'm even drinking out of a Guardians of the Galaxy cup right now, you know. Um, but I did feel like it was like being knighted. It was a ceremony. I think it was a test and a ceremony that was put together, much like guard dogs when they graduate from their obedience school. Um, I just curious, could you see the similarities there as well? Yeah, I think it's very strange. Um, but it did not give me more sympathy for them, though, I have to say. Um, but because I saw that they really do exploit humans as a resource. We're working animals for them, you know. Um, but at the time when it happened, I was very moved by what I perceived as an honor, when really what might have just been a label, you know.
Did they ever give you names or where they're from?
I never asked them where they're from. I did ask them how they got here, and they told me that. But and now don't swear me to this. It's very hazy to me. But when I asked them what do they call themselves, because I was like the gray, it's like you don't call me the peach, like that, that doesn't make any sense. I believe they said, and maybe I'm wrong, but it sounded like Darkonian, Darkon, Darkon, or Darkonian, something like that. I want to lean more toward Darkon. Darkons? or archons. I don't know. It was something like that. Darkonian, Darkon, Archon, somewhere in that realm. But you have to understand that sometimes when they interact with you, they'll like nerf you. And it reminds me of like when people talk about the effects of scopolamine, where you just become agreeable and out of it, and you're still functional, but you really don't have a will of your own. And sometimes I think it affects your memory of things to where I remember what happened, but it's fuzzy. It's not inaccurate, it's incomplete, right? And it was during one of those times when I remember them saying, and they said, you may call us, and it's like Archon, Darkonian. Oh, I can't remember exactly, but it was something like that. And they have a name for themselves, and it's not the Greys. No.
The the people that I'm involved with have contact with the Zetas. Now, I know there's a race of reptilians called the Dracos, so the
Hmm.
Draconians. Now that sounds a
Yeah,
lot like that.
right. And that's what I thought too. And that's why I thought, oh, it couldn't be that because that sounds like the lizard aliens that we hear about. I have and by the way, I fully believe that they exist, the lizard aliens. I don't believe that they're aliens though. I believe that they are the remnants of the dinosaur age, and they've had 65 million years ahead of us to evolve, and they've evolved to the point that they live under the surface of the planet and that they have developed technologies which are strictly meant to keep them from becoming extinct because of their history. Um, and that there is an ongoing conflict or a battle of wills between these lizard reptilians, which kind of own the planet. It's their planet, but it's being invaded, it's being occupied, or it's being exploited by the Greys. And I think that there is an ongoing conflict between those two particular parties, and we're caught in the middle. Yeah.
So, in a past interview, you said that you were afraid of flying.
Mm.
Why?
It's not for crashing. Um, it's because I have had times when I've had craft try to abduct me from the roadway, from the woods, and so I hesitate to think of what an easy target I would be in a pressurized metal tube at 38,000 feet. And they would have the ability to fly up right beside, take me, and then I couldn't see it coming or anything like that. And the thought of that I find to be very distressing. And it doesn't even mean that it would happen. These are the type of anxieties and the complex PTSD that you develop over a while as you just start looking at every angle at which you might be vulnerable to them and trying to circumvent it or cut it off at the pass. Yeah.
Well, let's get into your possible highway abduction.
Yeah. So there have been two instances in which this has happened. And so I don't drive a lot. And if I do, it's usually in town. I don't take too many out of town trips. So, one night I am driving home from band practice. I had some crappy band that I was in, and I had gone originally because my wife at the time, whom I was married to for 20 years, uh, was upset with me because I was talking about my abductions. I was making noise. I was taking pictures of ground effects. I was taking pictures of the craft in the sky. And she worked for Wright Pat Air Force Base. In fact, I lived at Wright Pat Air Force Base during this time. And so I had gone to band practice to kind of blow off some steam and remove myself from the environment. And finally, I felt good enough to return home. And, one of the things she said to me was, "You think everything you see is a UFO and this and that." And I was like, okay. So that kind of really bothered me when she said that. And so I'm driving home, and I don't know, it's about 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the evening. And I'm driving home in my truck, And I noticed there's a lot of cars in front of me and cars way, way behind me. And I see this bright light ahead of me, in between the two separate highways going each direction. And it's really bright. And I said, "You think everything is a UFO? Remember, it's an airplane. It's an airplane. Just don't freak out. Not everything is a UFO." And as I keep driving, this light seems to be intersecting with where I am on the highway. And as I'm watching it, it's a sphere, a big, bright, white, yellowish sphere. And it's right above the highway. And as I drive under it, it clicks off. Like literally, like when you turn off a light and you see the light dim. And I was like, okay. But when I drove under it, it was so close that I could see the light on my shirt through the windshield. It's very close. And then it turned off as I drove under it. And I was like, okay. And then I'm driving, and as I'm driving, all of a sudden I turn the wheel and I'm like, what's going on here? I'm not doing that. And then it did it again. And I was like, what? And then it did it one more time, like really violently. And I jerked the wheel back and I said, no, whatever that is, no. And I realized something, I could feel something like trying to take over my motor cortex. We were having a bit of a tug of war over the control of my muscular system. And so I realized, disrupt, disrupt, don't fight, disrupt. I cranked the radio as loud as I could. I started screaming along with the music. I started envisioning me taking whatever this is and throwing it out of my mind and locking the door. And I felt it let go. And I felt it like it's like you're trying to scruff like a wild cat, and it goes so crazy. You're like, okay, okay, that's what it felt like. I had to become feral, like almost feral in that moment, in order to fight back whatever that was that I was experiencing. And I've never experienced it before or since, but that moment, I was on the highway at night, and whatever this was trying to pull me over to the side of the road. And to this day, I still have a chill run up my spine whenever I'm driving down the highway and I see an abandoned car on the side of the road. And I wonder, did they get them too? Am I the lucky one? You know? Um, and it really does. It affects the way you see the world. Um, And then there was one other time when it seemed like I was someone was attempting to abduct me. I've spent a lot of time out in the woods developing woodland survival skills. I'm very interested in survival and bushcrafting and things like that. And so a friend of mine had 200 acres and he gave me permission. He said, go out and do whatever you want, whenever you want. And I would often go out on weekend days when the weather was nice, and I would go and I would hike, and then I would make camp, and I would make fire, make a meal, make some coffee, and just kind of hang out by myself in the quiet of nature. I found it to be quite the oasis, peaceful. And this day was like, no, it was just like any other day. I'd hiked up to my base camp that I had on his property, which was at the top of a hill. And I get there and I'm still kind of sweaty from where I'm walking. I'm a big guy, so when I walk, I work up a sweat. And I get there and I'm a little out of breath. It's okay. Set the pack down and I start getting ready to unpack my bag. And I got out some beef jerky that I had, and I was getting things out to make myself a cup of coffee and to make a fire. And as I'm going about these activities, I had literally just gotten there. And all of a sudden, when you're out in the woods, you hear the leaves rustle and you hear birds in the distance, you hear little critters chittering along. Suddenly, it became dead, still, quiet. And I mean so quiet that it was like thunder. Like it was just like everything stopped. And when everything stopped, so did I. I started paying attention. And I looked up from my bag to see what might be around. And all I see is like a yellow haze everywhere. It looks like the entire woods where I am is just filled with this yellow haze. You can see through it, but it's like, it's strange. And when it got to me and I could feel myself being within it, and I'm not kidding you, I'm not exaggerating, something inside my head, I received a message from somewhere that said, go, run now. And I did not question it. I picked up my bag, I threw my stuff in it, and now my big behind now has to go trucking back down this hill. Only now I'm doing it at double time, right? And I'm running from something that I can't even prove is chasing me. I feel ridiculous, but there's someone telling me, no, no, keep going. Don't stop. Go, go, go. And I get to my truck. I throw the pack inside and I'm like, wow, great trip in the woods. I turn on the truck's fine. I take off, I start going down the road. I'm hot and sweaty now. I just trekked up a hill and then had to trek a mile and a half back down the hill. And I'm frustrated because I don't know what's going on. I didn't even get to spend any time in the woods. And I have the window down and the air's hitting me and I have the radio on and I'm like, okay, okay. I don't know what that was, but it seems okay now. So I'm driving along. About 10 minutes go by and all of a sudden my radio starts getting real staticky. And so it's like so staticky, I just I turn it down and then like it got quiet. I turned it back up and I'm like, now there's no sound at all. I thought, what's wrong with this stupid thing? And that's when I see red and blue lights behind me. No sound, no siren, just lights. And I look in the rearview mirror because I look at the side of the road and I realize this is a 2-lane country road. There's nowhere to pull over to. And I thought, who's the ass who's pulling me over when there's no place to pull over? And so I look in the rearview mirror, and what I see is this oval craft right behind me on the road. I can see the shadow under it as it's hovering above the asphalt, matching speed with me like it's locked onto my bumper. And it has red, white, and blue, red, white, and blue, these big, chunky, square lights that look like they're windows, but they're like a strobe effect, faster than what you would see like a police officer's lights, where they tend to be whoop, whoop. These were like very fast. And so I look and I realize this is right behind me on the highway. It took up both sides of the road. It was so big, and it's right behind me. So I did what any highly intelligent person would do is I floored it in my Chevy Avalanche to try to outrun them. And so, but I wasn't trying to outrun them. My strategy was they're in an alien spacecraft. I'm in a Avalanche. I'm not going to outrun them. But I thought I don't have to outrun them. I need to find people. I need to get around people right now. And I realized it's just over that hill. So, whoa, I floor it. And here we go. And boy, here goes the speedometer. And I'm really maxing out this truck right now. And this thing just stays locked right on my bumper. There's no distance. When I speed up, it doesn't even like compensate. It's already locked onto me. And so I panic a little because I was thinking about being taken away from my wife and my son and like never being brought back or something. And if they didn't know what happened to me, it could be devastating to them. And so I give it one last push of that pedal, and I crest that hill and I go airborne slightly. Boom, boom. But as I come down the hill, there's the town, there's the exit and exchange where cars are coming in. There's cars, I see people and all. And as I crest the hill and start going down, this craft breaks off its pursuit and takes off to the left of me. And I see this craft just slowly rise and leave and go out of sight. And I coasted back into town, down the hill there toward people. And when I got out of the truck, I just my hands I was like this. But what's crazy is someone knew they were coming and they warned me while I was up there on that hill. This is who I was supposed to run from, right? That they were helping me. Someone was helping me and saying, you don't want these guys to take you. Go now, right? Or they knew that I was going to be taken maybe and not returned, because that was the only thing I could think of um, when it was happening to me. Yeah.
You talk about a phenomenon called the abduction hangover. What's that?
So it's for me, it is that feeling when you wake up from an experience where there are certain symptoms that are associated with that I specifically find falls in the pattern with abduction experiences. Um, when I wake up from an experience or a suspected experience, because I don't remember them always. In fact, most of the time, I don't think I remember, but I will see lights out hovering. I will often take pictures or videos and confirm, yeah, that's not an airplane, that's not a balloon, that's them. You know as well as I do, once you've had so many experiences, I'm really sorry about that. I live a mile from a hospital. Um, but you learn like, oh, that's them. You recognize them. And you get this feeling, at least I would get this feeling when I looked at them, of dread when I look at it. And it's like, that's almost like how I know. It's not even visual, it's like physical. I look at it and I can look at a star. Oh, that's Venus. And oh, that's them. And it's like, I know because my heart sinks, my stomach knots up. But I'll see a light before I go to sleep. I'll wake up, and sometimes like I'll wake up like and just sit up in bed. Often after a waking experience, like, and then I'll pass out or be made unconscious. And then when I wake up, it's like I'm just coming back to myself in a very severe way. And then I would have two like little, I call them snake bites, but there are two little dots right beside each other on my hand that would always accompany the lights in the sky, the impressions on the ground, and then I would wake up in the middle of the night, oftentimes. And this is like so crazy because you see it in movies, but I would wake up time after time after time at guess what time? Guess what time I would wake up?
333, 111.
3:33 a.m. Yes, you know. You say, I don't know. Yes, you do know. 3:33 a.m. almost every single time. And when I would wake up during that time with those marks after seeing those lights, I would wake up. The first thing I want to do is, I'm hot. I'm burning up. I need to go splash some water on my face. I feel sticky. I feel like I've been touched everywhere. I'm thirsty. I'm dying of thirst. I'm just drinking water out of my hand, just troughing in the sink like a puppy dog trying to get a drink. And then there is like a headache that I feel, a lethargy, and then there's something else that accompanies it. And I don't know if it's from like an adrenaline dump or maybe some kind of endorphin crash, but I would often feel this feeling of, I don't know how to say it any other way except like when they describe Dementors in Harry Potter. I feel like I'd never be joyful again. That's how I felt every single time. And so the way that I combat this, it's kind of funny, I guess, but you can trust me, try it yourself if you ever need to. Chocolate milk. Chocolate milk is the remedy that I found works so amazingly well. Not like a tranquilizer or a Valium or no. get chocolate milk and just drink chocolate milk until you don't want to drink chocolate milk anymore. And when you're finished, you will feel much better. And what's interesting, and if I could draw a correlation between Harry Potter and the real world, which I do at every opportunity, um, remember Professor Lupin when he encountered Harry after he had been affected by a Dementor? What did he give him? Chocolate. Here, eat this. You'll feel better, right? And he kept pushing. Here, eat the chocolate. You'll feel better if you eat the chocolate. That's how I am going to tell you about abductions. Drink the chocolate milk. You'll feel better. And when I drink it, it's like, it's not all, I like chocolate milk. It's literally like relief. Oh, because I think there's something in the chocolate milk that like it restarts your brain chemicals again and gives you that relief that you've been tapped out from your experience, that ontological trauma and shock. You've like depleted all of the good chemicals in your brain. And so you just feel as low as you can possibly feel. And this is a way of just getting it to just your heart to start beating again a little bit, emotionally speaking. And I do highly recommend the virtues of chocolate milk when it comes to dealing with the symptoms of what I call the abduction hangover. Yeah.
Now, you talked about waking up with body marks, but are you aware if they ever put an implant in you?
Yes. Interestingly enough, let me get a drink real quick. Mm. So this experience, this was my first waking experience, um, with seeing one of the gray aliens. Is I go to sleep normally, and I wake up and I open my eyes, and I'm not in my bedroom. I'm in a place that's lit, brightly lit, but I can't see a light anywhere. It's like, imagine like like a dome over you, and instead of like a ceiling, like a solid surface, that they're LED screens, like with just white on the screen. That's what it felt like I was surrounded by all of the just one continuous screen that was emitting white light, not a light bulb or a single hot source, but it was everywhere. And I'm lying there and I'm looking up, and to my right I could see I'm lying on a table, and there's like, I could lift my head up just a little bit and I could look down and I see there's some contraption down there. I don't feel anything, but I can see it. And it's kind of scary. Like it's a like large, like blackish gray, weird looking device down there. Um, and I can't feel anything that's going on. But I see the tray on the right hand side. It looks like a stainless steel, like medical tray. Like it looks like it holds instruments. And uh so I'm thinking, what's going on? And all of a sudden, as I'm laying there, I'm just looking up and I'm very calm. I'm not trying to get up or anything. And this being leans over me and he goes, huh, he has a startle response. He looks down and sees me and uh-oh. And he reaches over my body to the tray, and he picks up this, it looked like a metal cylinder with a fluted cylinder, like with these raised parts. And then at the end was like a round silver ball. And he took it and he went dink and he hit me in the head with it. Not hard, like trying to kill it, but just like dink. No, not today, sir. I believe it was like anesthesia of some kind or a way to just render you instantly unconscious. Because when he leaned over and looked at me, I saw two things. One, he's wearing like what I would call a containment suit that had a white helmet with large eyes. But what I could see, oh, you're in there. That's not you. You're inside there. I could see his actual eyes beyond the lenses. They were like dark amber colored lenses, and I could see his actual eyes through the lenses. And he leaned in close, and when he leaned in to look at me, I just smiled. I didn't, because I thought bad things happen when we panic, right? So be cool, be very calm under this kind of pressure. He panicked. I believe it was a he. He panicked and reached over and was like, nope, the silverback is waking up on the table. Absolutely not. And then that was another one of those times when I woke up, like sitting up in bed like that. I went to the bathroom, washing my hands, doing my normal after abduction ritual, and oh, ah, ha ha, I felt something. It felt like a little plastic BB or something in my lip. And I thought, that's where you put it? That's why I think they made me unconscious. I think I woke up on the operating table and they were really afraid about that. Um, and when I looked in the mirror, I checked and I turned my lip inside out. Yeah, you can see there's like a ball in there that doesn't make any sense. And then I looked and I was like, there's a raised red spot right where he touched me with that instrument, that device. Um, and it was there for, oh my gosh, maybe a year. It drove me crazy. It drove me I was like this close to cutting it out myself. And I had moved from Ohio to where I live now in Pennsylvania. I thought it'd be cool like Transylvania, but it's not. But the point is that I was crashing on my friend's couch for a couple of weeks while I was waiting for the purchase of my uh, to purchase my home here in Pennsylvania. And I woke up one day on the couch, and I was like, "Oh, hey, it's gone." I can still feel like some scar tissue in there or something, but it's gone now. And then I was like, "Oh, that's great, I guess." And then I went to wash my hands and I could feel it. It's behind my ear now. They moved it. I think they said he woke up on the table, just get it done. We'll fix it later. And they put an implant in my lip. And then later they said, we really ought to fix that now and put it someplace he can't access it or that won't be quite so easy to get to. So now it's behind my ear where my ear and my scalp meet, and I can literally feel it's the same thing. It was here and now it's back here. Um, and it's so strange. Uh, and I would like to actually have it removed, but I don't know exactly how to go about that. How do you talk to a doctor about, I need a suspected alien implant it removed from my head, if that would be okay? I don't even know how to have that conversation with someone. Yeah. But yeah, it's true.
In regards to your son, are you aware if he ever had contact?
So when he was about 15, and he's since passed away, but when he was 15, he came to me very shaken one morning. And this was not a kid who, like, he didn't complain a lot about anything. He was a very good kid. But he come to me one day and he's very shaken. He said, Dad, I need help. And it was early in the morning. I was like, what's the matter? And I could see, oh, his nose is bleeding. I was like, are you okay? And he said, come here. And he brought me in to the bedroom, and you could see there was like blood, like a significant like spot of blood on his pillow. And I said, what happened? And he said, I went to sleep, something, and he said something, but he didn't go into detail about what it was. And then he said he went back to sleep, and when he woke up, there was blood on his pillow. And I have heard that in some cases, when they do implants on people, they do them in their septum. And that waking up with a nosebleed like that, especially a significant one, could mean that you've received an implant. He also expressed one time to me an experience where he was at summer camp, and he's with the other boys, and they were going to sneak over to the girls' camp, at night. And, boys being boys. And he said they go over in the middle of the night. And he said, as they get close to it, he said that there was a flash of blue-green lightning in the woods that scared them. And when the flash was gone, there stood a being. And he described the being as being like dressed in like what we would call like a hoodie. It was a hood and it was all black, that the face was like the way he described the face was the way I would describe the helmet or mask worn by the human females that would come into the room. It's like it looks like um layers and layers of like wire over each other. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what he described. And he said it was that for a face, black clothing, glow white hands, glow white shoes. And he said they all just stopped. And he said the whatever this was, he said it was huge. And he said it stood there and it never said a word. And they're watching it. And they said he could just, he said he was watching it just like breathing. They could see his shoulders rise and fall, like breathing heavily. And then there was another flash of blue green lightning, and the being was gone. And the boys turned and ran for their lives back to the cabin. And he told me that story before he passed away. Um, and he was always very interested in hearing about my experiences because I would share them with him because I wanted him to be able to recognize this activity if it happened to him, and also be able to tell my story if something were to happen to me. But uh, he never told me any specifics about being taken, but those were the two things he told me that I felt were very anomalous and fall right in line with some of my strange experiences as well. And he was also tall, that had blue eyes. Yeah.
In regards to you coming out with your experiences, have the government or army ever approached you or harassed you?
So the Air Force, someone I'll say affiliated with the Air Force, paid me a visit once before something really bad happened to me. And they said, this was, I'm outside and I'm taking pictures of the ground effects of where these objects are just landing on my lawn and they're creating these impressions like geometric uh, type of impressions, and I'm trying to capture them on film. And this guy in a suit walks up to me. He walks right into my yard, walks right up to me. And he says, no one has the right to decide who gets to know this and who doesn't. You know, no one person should have that kind of power. And I just looked at the person and he said, these things are often very important when it comes to national security. And he kept like kind of hitting on certain things that he wanted me to hear. And he said, no one person knows enough to be able to make that kind of determination of who should know what, that is best left to others, because I was being very loud about my experiences. I was freaking out about my experiences. I felt a feeling of helplessness that I've never experienced before or since. And they were taking me around 2006, 2007. They were taking me a lot. And it was getting to me. After a while, I would dread looking at the sky because I knew what was going to happen. And so this gentleman uh, just made some very strong, compelling statements. And I kept waiting for him to kind of just tell me what he wants. But I feel like that is what he was doing. What he wanted was for me to be quiet. Now, I did not take the hint, and I experienced some severe and life-changing consequences as a result of that. Um, and I still have not learned my lesson, apparently.
You were a guest on Coast to Coast AM and on William Shatner's show. Could you talk about that a bit?
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, I want to say I go back with Coast to Coast back to the Art Bell days. I am very nostalgic about Art Bell and what he has really done for what I like to call the fringe community um, in general, whether that be like Bigfoot sightings or UFOs or whatever. He had a way and a charisma of opening people's minds up to accept things uh, that they ordinarily would not have, to consider them as possibilities. And so uh, I got to talk to the person, of course, he passed the torch to, George Norrie. I've been a guest on Coast to Coast 6 times, but the last 2 times I've been on, I felt like were really the best interviews I had done on their particular media platform because one was very much like how I'm talking to you about sharing my experiences. And George has a great manner. I love the way that he talks, and it was an honor to be able to discuss my own abductions with George Norrie on Coast to Coast. It's like, wow, you know, but also about how receptive the audience was to what I had to say. They took my book, Beneath the Haunted Sky, the evidence for alien abduction, and they made it a #1 bestseller, kicking Neil deGrasse Tyson out of his #1 spot and putting me in there briefly. And I was just like, wow, you know. Um, when I was on the Unexplained, it was as a guest expert on the Coral Castle. I'm a megalithic structure expert, and so they had me on there, flew me down to the Coral Castle from where I'm in Pennsylvania and shot it on location. And what's funny is I'm such a not I'm moody, I guess you could say, and I'm not a huge fan of lots of attention. And so I get a call by Prometheus Entertainment. Hi, my name is, I believe his name is Daniel. Hi, I'm Daniel, and I am a producer with Prometheus Entertainment for the History Channel. We would love to have you on our show. And I said, no, thank you. And I hung up the phone. And I was married to my second wife at the time. She's like, who was that? And I said, oh, that was Prometheus from the History Channel, and they were inviting me to be on TV. And she said, well, what'd you say? And I said, no, because I don't want to. And so the phone immediately rang again. And I threw her the phone and I said, just please tell them I'm not interested, okay? Like, thanks and all, but no thanks. And the reason was because I don't like when I trust you, but I don't like when people are in charge of the editing process. Because I've seen many times that you can get a person who says one thing to make it look like they're saying the opposite. Editing magic, you know? And so I was very suspicious about that. And so I throw her the phone and I said, just tell him, that I appreciate it, but I'm not interested. So she takes the phone call and she walks out of the room with the phone, and she's gone for a few minutes. And I'm yelling from the other room, tell them I said no, you know. And she comes back out holding the phone and she said, will you please just hear him out? Just talk to him for a moment for me. I said, okay. So I took the phone and he said, listen, um, I know why you're saying no. I understand. But he said, we really want to do this segment on the Coral Castle. And if you won't agree to do it, we're just going to scrap the segment because, and he said, when he said this, I was like, well, he said, there's really no other person to talk to on the subject. And I was like, wow. Like he said, you are the voice of the Coral Castle, and I think you deserve to have your voice heard. And I was like, oh, all right, I'm in, I guess, you know. And it actually, yeah, exactly. And so it ended up being a really good experience for me. Something just very positive and a really unexpected honor. And I want to show something. I hope it's okay. Um, but I have a very important picture to me, and it is me. I don't know if you can see Giorgio, and then there's me, and then there's this is Eric Von Daniken, me, and Giorgio Tsoukalos all in the same picture. And we were all together in that picture, and we've all been on the History Channel. So it was just like I met them at Alien Con in 2018, 3 months before I was on the History Channel myself. And so I look at this picture fondly as we are alumni together in this picture. And so it's a very special thing for me. But yeah, so that was my experience uh, with both of those media producers, and they've always been positive experiences, which is why I keep going back if I'm asked. Yeah.
You sent me a photo of a UFO taken at Wright-Patterson. Can you get into that?
Oh, absolutely. April 2006. Why do I feel like I'm on the Golden Girls? Picture it, Sicily, 1923. That's how I feel. It was April of 2006 at Wright-Patt Air Force Base, and my son at the time, I believe he was, I don't know, 10, going on 11. He was on spring break, bumming around the house for 2 weeks. And one of the things we would do is we would go out back and we would play wiffle ball, just me and him. And so we're out there, we're playing. And of course, where we lived, you see planes land and take off all day long. We even made a game of, ooh, that's a C-10. Ooh, that's a C-130. Oh, that's an F-15. We knew the planes by heart, even. And so you kind of get used to the speed and the way that air traffic moves, kind of subconsciously. And as we're out there and I'm pitching the ball and we're playing, and I see something out of the corner of my eye, but I don't pay attention until I realize that's that's not moving. What is that? And what I see, and I call my son over, I say, "Come here, look at this." And it's this very long, like tubular shaped object. And I always struggle to describe the surface. It's like copperish, grayish, like deeply scratched looking metal. I don't even know how to describe it to you. I've never seen anything like it. But it's made of this metal and it's kind of shiny. And as it's spinning, it's glinting sunlight off of the high points, and you can see it. And what I realize immediately is I don't know what you are, but you are in the wrong place, mister, because that is exactly where all the air traffic for this Air Force base goes in and out. He's posted up in the middle of an intersection, so to speak. And I tell my son, I say, hold on, I'll be right back. This was, again, before the advent of these clever guys, the old cell phone. I had a digital camera, a 3.2 megapixel camera. Yeah, I know, right? I might one less pixel, and it's just a description. It's not even a picture at that point. So I run in, I grab it off of the mantle, I come outside, and I turn it on. And I told my son to keep an eye on it in case it moved. And as I turn the camera on, these two jets just they come out from in front what look like the house in front of us. I mean, they're so low, they're so fast that when they appeared, my son and I both jumped. It surprised us by how loud and sudden they were. And I see that it's two airplanes, and they're kind of like this, like cover, like a lead plane and a wingman lagging off the right wing. And the lead plane levels out and turns its belly toward the cigar shaped object, then flattens out and goes. When that happens, it instigates a reaction on the part of this object. And this cylindrical, grayish, copperish object now goes woo, like shields up. And what I suspect is a plasma shielding of some type based on its appearance. And it goes from that color to bright fuzzy white now. And I hold the camera up, and as I pull the camera up, this craft it moves in midair and tilts at what I later found it with a protractor is an exact 60-degree angle like this. It hesitates for a moment and then it's gone. And I don't mean it's moving, I mean it's gone. like magic, right? And uh, right before it left, I took a picture, and then my camera died immediately as it left. And I wasn't sure, is that a dead battery or did they just kind of take out everything with that energy expenditure, right? And I had forgotten about the picture for a long time. Um, and I was cleaning out the digital camera, the memory to make room. And I was like, why do I have a picture of the backyard? Like, why is there a picture? I forgot I had taken it. When I ended up opening the memory and I blew it up and put it on the computer screen, I got a picture of the object. I didn't think I did, but I ended up actually getting a daylight photograph of a cigar-shaped UFO with my son as a witness as it's being chased by the military. I mean, wow, you know? Yeah.
Now, regarding some of your video captures that you've got on your website,
Mm.
your YouTube page. Now, I
Yeah.
did a small montage of at least three. Now, could you talk about the time when you felt that you had to go outside and fixate a certain part of the sky and
Yes.
tape it?
Yes. So there is a type of connection that forms, and I don't know if it is purposeful or it is incidental to being an abductee. But this is why I came up with the name UFO UAP magnet, because I just feel like they're just always around. I don't need to do a CE5. I am a CE5 just walking around. They will just show up somehow, even though I'm not doing anything to intentionally cause it or create it. And I remember, and this is when I was still living in Ohio and being abducted fairly regularly, that I'm sitting inside and I feel uncomfortable. I should be comfortable. It's a nice day. The house is clean. It's well appointed. I have everything I want, but I don't feel right. Something is saying, you should come outside. I'm like, why? I don't want to go outside. You know, you should go outside. You should go outside. You should go outside. And it's just like, it just won't stop. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, I think I'll go outside. And it said, you should go outside and you should look up. I'm like, oh, well, that's vague. I should go outside and look up. Okay. And all right, so I took my camera and I was like, okay, go outside and look up. And I'm like, look where? I said up. So I just faced a direction. I just turned on the camera and I said, okay, I'm not moving until you show me why I had to come outside and look up. And it took a minute and I'm feeling like the world's craziest person right now. Why are you outside? Because something told me to come outside and look up. And then right as I'm feeling like, okay, at what point do you question yourself? Right? Um, there it is. It shows up right in the center of the frame, a bright white light in the middle of the frame, in the middle of the day, for no reason whatsoever, in a random direction that I chose completely randomly. I just faced that way, and there it is, you know? And so I actually filmed it. I filmed a sighting before it happened, watched it happen, and then was there after it happened. And so I ended up posting this later um, and remembering it because someone was talking about how certain people have the ability to summon UFOs. And I said, I don't think it's the ability to summon. I think it might be the ability to sense when they're in the vicinity. And so you go out ahead of time and then they come to you. It looks like you're doing it. What you're doing is you're meeting them. You're sensing some feedback or some type of latent psychic message or something like that. But it just kept something inside my brain just kept saying, you should go outside. You should go outside. You should go outside and look up when you get outside. And come to find out, oh, there they are. And I don't know if it's them like kind of testing the link between us, but I think that the reason that they choose people who are like pale skinned, who have blue eyes, things like that, and American is because we have enough of their genes that we can receive their telepathy. Um, I don't think everyone can accept their telepathy or are as efficient at accepting it. Um, and so I have something I'd like to say about that as well, if that's okay, Jan. Thank you. Um, People confuse, I think, being psychic and telepathic. They're not the same thing. Um, and it wasn't me that created this distinction. It was the gray that was leading me around. He told me several things. One of them was that when they communicate with us, it's not back and forth like this Zoom call. It all takes place in our head. When they talk to us, they're inside our head. And when we reply to them, they're inside our head listening for the reply. We never send thoughts to them. We do not have the ability, according to this being, we do not have the ability to project thoughts, but we do have the ability to receive. They are like broadcasting towers. They can broadcast and receive. We can only receive. And that is one of the um, physiological differences between us, is that they have certain parts of their brain that are specialized and developed that we don't have, that allow them to do this back and forth, where we can only receive messages, but when we speak to them, they have to be in our head to hear it. And so he was very clear to me to let me know that because we can hear them, it doesn't mean we have special powers. It means they do. But what we have are some of the kinder genetics that allow us to be receivers and allow us to hear them.
So, does anyone want to see what a man testing his own sanity looks like? It looks like this. It looks like a moron standing outside in his backyard, pointing a digital camera up at a completely empty spot in the sky for what seems to be absolutely no reason. But there is a reason I'm out there. And it was because I'm sitting in the house and I feel this tug. This tug. It just keeps saying, go outside and look up. Just go outside and look up. Why don't you go outside and look up? You should go outside. And when you do, guess what you should do? You should look up. And so it's just nagging me. And so finally I'm like, okay, I'm going to go outside and look up so this feeling goes away. And I'm standing here and I'm standing there and I'm feeling like an idiot. Okay? But I said, you know what? I'm just going to stand here until something happens. And I'm just not going to move. And I'm just going to keep recording as long as I can. And this is broken up into two bits because my camera wouldn't record that long at a stretch. So I had to break it up. But you're going to see something very interesting happen here in a minute as I'm standing here being the world's most pointless human being. You're going to see it appear right in the center of your screen. And I'm standing here thinking, I'm going to have to stop this and start over in a minute. So I'm watching the clock tick away. And right as I look up at the last second, oh, look at that. When you know it, there's a little light that starts to appear in the distance. That appeared exactly where I was watching, out of nowhere. And later on, you'll see that this light gets very much closer. And you can see a lot more about it. But this phenomenon is real. I was standing there looking out at nothing because something told me to. And when I did, this light appeared in the center of that frame. It's a real phenomenon. As these lights got closer, they exhibit strange shapes, strange movements, strange configurations. They seem to change shape. They move incredibly fast from one spot to another with seemingly no effort between it.
This UFO was filmed outside at 4:54 in the morning, and as you're watching it descend, you will see it make a 90-degree angle turn right here, and then continue descending.
Let's talk about your book, Beneath the Haunted Sky. What was your reason for bringing it out?
Well, for one, therapy. I think I needed to get all of it out of my system. I just needed to purge it all. Um, but also, one of the things that I've been very disappointed to encounter in the UFO community is there is, uh, I think, an unfairly high percentage of people who are charlatans, grifters, things like that, and it causes a severe mistrust of the community and thus the claims of legitimate people in the community. I thought to myself, how many real, actual experiencers are there? I know there's many. How many of them are brave enough to tell their story? How many of them have nothing to lose like I do? I felt as though it were a responsibility on my part to say everything I know and use it as a time capsule of sorts, where I'm not only just telling my story in a biographical way, but I'm also documenting it, cataloging it, right? And I wanted to show people I'm taking you from the sky to the ground to me, an unbroken chain of evidence of the very best pictures that I've ever taken, um, along with the ground impressions, the abduction marks, the stones that they've given me, and give one of the most complete and evidence-packed abduction cases of all time, because I was at one time a MUFON field investigator. And so I'm gifted at investigation anyway, and also I'm trained to do it on this particular subject. And so I decided to investigate my own abductions, my own sightings, and that book was a culmination of all of that information, 20 years of information and evidence all packed into one book, because it is my goal to educate society and also to be as a support for other experiencers, to kind of teach them, here, have some chocolate milk. It'll be okay. Here's how to prevent, or not prevent, but how to discourage abduction, best practices, things like that. And right now, as it stands, I'm over 2 years, coming up on 3 years abduction free. And I'm very happy about that, because it was a source of great stress and sorrow in my life. It cost me relationships. It cost me even more than that. And I don't want it to have been for nothing. I wanted it to be meaningful and valuable. And the best way that I thought I could do that is by putting it in a book that everyone can read and see for themselves that not only do we live on a we live on a beautiful planet, but it exists beneath a haunted sky. And I think people need to know.
One last quick story. You sent me an image of a possible alien circuitry.
Mm,
What's that
yes.
about?
So that picture is actually taken from a photograph that I took of one of the objects posted up out near my house. And I was able to set up the camera in such a way that I could take a very, very still photograph. That's a challenge, even with camera phones and everything. Getting it without any movement or anything like that, close enough to see detail, still enough to be able to see it clearly. And when I got the picture at first, I was impressed by, I was like, oh, this is a very clear picture of this particular craft. And then what I did was I adjusted the brightness and the contrast. That's all I did. I did not add anything or take anything away. I just changed the lighting, the brightness, and the contrast. And what happened was it revealed, oh my gosh, you could see the actual circuitry. I think this might be the first photograph ever of actual technology working, actual UFO technology as it's working, not a crash disk, not this is in the sky, it's working, and this is the technology. And so I wasn't sure quite what I was looking at. It looked like a motherboard, like components, right? And so I sent this to a friend of mine who happens to be a very bright electrical engineer named Paul Bellin. And Paul's a sweetheart. And I sent it to him and I said, do you recognize anything here? And he said, these are electrical components. But he's like, the scale makes no sense. He's like, that's too big. You can't do it. And then he said, it's layered. He said, it's like circuit board after circuit board after circuit board after circuit board layered on top of each other, all interconnected in a three-dimensional. He's like, I can tell you this is technology, but I could not begin to tell you what it does or how it works. And he even pointed out some specific things. He's like, this is an RF, I don't know, RF something he identified. And he's like, but this is as long as your arm by the scale. And he's like, the ones we make are this size. He's like, this is the size of your arm. Like, he's like, that can't be it, like, we don't have a way to do that, even on our best day. And so that picture, I think, is something that in the future could prove to be very valuable if we have people who have the electronical engineering expertise to be able to kind of forensically analyze what some of these smaller components are and how they might work together. I unfortunately don't have the expertise. I'm just the lucky person who got to snap the photo and I can hand it off to someone else for investigation. But that is maybe the most compelling photograph that I've ever taken over the course of about 20 years. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell a little bit of a story about that, the story behind it.
To finish off the interview, do you have a final story that you might want to get out, or perhaps a final closing statement?
That's a very generous thing to offer me. Thank you. And in closing, I also want to say thank you again to you, Jan, for having me on here. This has been a very enjoyable, relaxing, and somewhat cathartic experience, if you don't mind me saying so, because it's very nice to talk to people who you know have been through the same thing. There's a different kind of connection there than I normally experience. And I felt that and I honor it. But I want people to know that when you hear your fellow human beings telling you about traumatic experiences, do not judge the experience. Heal their trauma. Deal with them as people. Do not be all caught up in, did this happen the way they say, or is this or that? Trust your fellow human beings sometimes, that we are waiting on government disclosure when people like me and yourself have been disclosing for years on end. Why a government that lies to people is more trustworthy of a source of information than people who have never done that to others in their life, who I have nothing to gain from this. People say, oh, you're selling books. Yeah, because it's mass communication, because I can't come knock on your door individually like a vacuum cleaner salesman and tell you each myself, or I would. But that there are people in this world who are genuine, who have experienced something that is beyond the comprehension of most. And the heroes who choose to come forward should not be ridiculed or mocked. They should be honored, they should be listened to, and we should be believed. Because we are your best bet for the future. Invest in us. We'll make you proud.
Well said. Well said. So RL, thank you so much for coming on today. I've enjoyed our talk, and I appreciate all the details that you got into. I've had fun.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me about them. That was great. And I'm willing to come back anytime. Okay?
Awesome.
Thank you.
And to those watching, I hope you enjoyed today's interview. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I will see you guys next time. So take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.